Violet Brooks stood at the entrance of the high-end safari lodge, her heart pounding with anticipation. For years, she'd served endless streams of customers at the local diner, each cup of coffee she poured a step closer to this moment. Her journey had been fueled by years of thriftiness, a worn-out dress from the charity shop her proud attire for the day. The lodge stood majestic against the endless African plains, its polished facade glistening under the harsh sun. Well-dressed guests strolled through the meticulously landscaped gardens, their laughter mixing with the sounds of distant wildlife. Violet felt a slight pang of self-consciousness as she adjusted the strap of her cloth bag, a simple substitute for the designer totes swinging from the shoulders of the other guests. Her eyes widened at the opulence surrounding her, the elegant wooden beams, the subtle fragrance of exotic flowers, the attentive staff who moved gracefully across the polished floors. It was everything she'd imagined, yet far more intimidating in reality. As she approached the reception desk to inquire about the schedule for safari sightings, her voice betrayed her nerves. "Excuse me, could you tell me about the, best spots for the, lion places?" Her awkward phrasing drew a sharp glance from the manager behind the desk, a tall woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a smile tinted with disdain. "Lion places," the manager echoed loudly, arching an eyebrow as a smattering of laughter erupted from somewhere behind Violet. "This is not some common zoo, dear. We offer a refined experience here for those who appreciate it." The words cut deep, and Violet's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as all eyes seemed to weigh her inadequacy. The laughter seemed to hang in the air, echoing around Violet even after the sound had faded away. She felt heat rising at the back of her neck, and her vision blurred slightly as tears threatened to spill. Her heart hammered in her chest, screaming at her to escape the judgmental eyes of those who now saw her as little more than a curiosity, a joke. As the moment stretched uncomfortably, Violet turned away from the desk, her gaze fixed firmly on the polished floor. She took careful steps toward the lodge's exit, her mind swirling in humiliation as the whispers and sideways glances from other guests robbed her of any remaining confidence. A vibrant painted mural of proud elephants and lush green landscapes covered one wall, barely noticed as she passed by, struggling to control her breathing, her earlier excitement now sharply dimmed. Once outside, the brightness of the late morning sun assaulted her senses. She walked briskly away from the bustling lodge, seeking solitude away from the thrumming activity around her. Eventually, she found a quiet bench beneath the shade of a sprawling baobab tree, its branches stretching protectively above as if to shelter her from the world's harshness. Violet sat down, her hands trembling as they clutched her bag. The bench, hard and defined, served as a steady anchor, and she focused on the sensation, willing herself to remain calm. The warm African breeze whispered around her, carrying with it the scent of earth and the distant calls of wildlife that she had so desperately longed to hear firsthand. Her heart began to steady as she allowed her memories to surface, seeking comfort in the journey that had brought her here despite the bitter taste of disappointment now lodged in her throat. Years of working tirelessly at the diner, late shifts filled with clattering plates and endless orders all blurred together in her mind. Every extra shift was money in her savings jar, the glass one she hid behind old cookbooks on the shelf in her tiny apartment. She remembered the evenings she'd skipped meals, opting instead to nibble on whatever was left after the evening rush, just to save a little more. Her warm, inviting personality was a beacon for many of the diner's regulars, some of whom became closer than distant relatives. Yet now, these reflections juxtaposed with her current reality amplified her sense of isolation. She had dared to dream beyond her everyday life, beyond the small windows of opportunity life had given her, and yet here she was, dreams slipping through her fingers, tarnished by ridicule. She filled with longing as she recalled looking through the lodge's brochure for the 100th time the night before her flight, her favorite picture of majestic lions reclining beneath the vastness of golden skies glued to her mind. It had been just a cherished image, the kind that sat with her during long shifts, whispering promises of days where one day could be today. The initial plan to visit had meant more than a safari, it was intended as a move toward healing her recent grief. Her closest childhood friend, June, had been a spirited soul with boundless love for wildlife. They had talked of adventures and African savannas on slow summer days throughout their childhood. One day, they had said, their dream more aspiration than certainty. But now June was gone, her life cut short by illness a few short months ago. This trip had been, on some level, for her as much as for Violet. It had felt like a personal tribute, a way to lay a tangible piece of their shared dream to rest, to honor all that had been and all that could never be. Bordering on tears yet again, Violet clenched her fists, driving her nails into her palms as she suppressed the overwhelming disappointment and loss. The rich tapestry of emotions unfurled within her, a blend of sadness, frustration, but beneath it, the remnants of determination that had brought her here. This was a crucial moment where grief met the iron will she had nurtured over years of facing life's challenges. The injustice of her situation weighed heavily on her, yet, as she reflected further, she could recall countless small victories amidst her struggles, a perfect dinner service she'd executed solo when co-workers faltered under the rush, or hosting charity events using little more than her earnings and goodwill to make a difference for her community. While others viewed her life through the filter of modesty, only she held the truth of her resilience. The thought of letting this experience culminate in defeat started to infuse her with a new sense of resolve. As she sat there, battling with raw emotions, Violet began to discern a quiet revelation, a conscious decision to not let one person's unkindness tarnish the memories she still had. Her journey had never been about exclusivity or status, it was about feeling connected to something beyond herself, connected to the earth and a truth she shared once with her dear friend. For Violet, this perspective shift represented small, yet powerful, steps toward reclaiming her experience. With her feet firmly on the ground, she began to put aside anger and emotional discord, instead seeking out pathways forward. As a moment of calm descended like the soothing shade of the baobab, a realization emerged. Broken dreams could still lay foundation for growth, for new dreams, things unforeseen. Gathering her belongings and standing once more, Violet looked out across the rolling landscape with eyes no longer clouded by tears. Her vision, though interrupted, was not wholly undone. Out there, amid the rustle of leaves and distant sounds of life, she felt the faintest flicker of hope, a gentle reminder that within the heart of the world lay enough beauty and wonder untouched by human pettiness and cruelty. Deciding to carry that light forward, and whatever quiet strength she could muster, Violet took her leave of the shaded bench, charting a new course and steeling herself against the bitterness of defeat. Lingering beneath the sprawling shade of the baobab, Violet breathed deeply, allowing the rich, earthy sense of this new world to fill her lungs. The tranquil scene stretched out before her, interrupted only by the sighing wind rustling the tree's massive branches. Though the earlier confrontation left scars, Violet's resilience subtly kindled within her, like the steady warmth of an ember refusing to die. Deciding to honor the remaining time she had promised herself, Violet embraced the small yet significant decision to witness whatever beauty she might still encounter. She collected her bag and resolved to explore the grounds, even if the safari itself had been marred by mockery. The vision of the savannah and its untamed inhabitants called to her. It was the true heart of her journey, after all. Violet took the path leading around the side of the lodge, away from crowds and critical eyes. Her steps guided her past the service and staff access areas, where gleaming safari vehicles lined up like majestic beasts of steel. Pausing for a moment, her gaze settled on one jeep in particular, its form distinct among others due to the bright mural of a leaping antelope adorning its side. A movement out of the corner of her eye caught her attention, a flicker of crested blue from just beyond a service entrance, as a rare bird alighted on a nearby fence. As she marveled at its beauty, a stray noise, a clatter of voices coming from beyond the door, filtered out. Drawn by her curiosity, she drifted closer, careful to remain unseen. Through a slight crack in the door, two lodge employees were engaged in a hushed conversation. "Water supply's been dodgy for weeks now," whispered a young man with nervous eyes cast around them. "Management's ignoring it all, hoping no one notices." Beside him, a middle-aged woman in a service uniform nodded gravely, her voice strained. "They're more worried about the cost to fix it than the safety measures. If word gets out, we're in trouble." I heard it can make the animals sick. The young man sighed, his worry evident as he added, and don't get me started on the wastewater tanks near the staff quarters. Nothing but chemicals leaching out. Violet's heart quickened at their words. Her earlier indignation was reinvigorated by a need for justice and accountability. She had endured the earlier slight, not just hers but that of every visitor who might be unwittingly complicit in a negligent system. To her, the environment was an extension of her own dreams, and she knew she could not stay silent. Quietly withdrawing, Violet made her way to a discreet area, from which she could safely inquire further without drawing undue attention. She scrolled through her phone, searching for wildlife conservation and inspection organizations to report the situation she had overheard. Her breath steadied as she realized her past diligence held new purpose. She had researched potential contacts while planning this trip, and now their wisdom might be her ally. In quick succession, she composed an email, including photographs of the aging padlock and murky water source she noticed earlier, detailing the overheard concerns. She addressed it to a respected wildlife inspector known for her steadfast commitment to protecting vulnerable ecosystems. Violet prayed her message would reach the right ears and urged them to investigate further without delay. As she pressed send, Violet was heartened by the knowledge that, while small, her action could yet inspire change. After all the personal storms weathered, finding the courage to voice a concern that might improve the very land she stood on was an irony of redemption she found profoundly satisfying. Leaving the service path, Violet re-emerged, wandering toward the unmarked trails near the lodge's perimeter. With less polished vistas and rough pathways, these areas nevertheless offered quiet views, uncharted wilds where cultivated gardens gave way to the genuine earth. The quiet space let her mind drift back to June and the sacred bond they shared. With every step, Violet considered the gift her beloved friend had given her, unwavering belief in a world worth exploring, where each voice could resonate with the universe if one dared to speak. The savoring landscape lit her path. Warm sunlight filtered through whirling leaves, glistening dew-kissed sunflowers' crowns, and distant waves of grass glimmered in silver and gold. Without fear of judgment now, she could fully embrace the simplicity and depth of nature's canvas. Gradually, a subtle transformation settled into Violet's demeanor. Though unwanted reminders of fallibility remained, the broader insight she carried might resist such a narrow lens. Her path served others, perhaps offering them courage unwoven from formidable strength. Walking with renewed purpose, Violet emerged at the ridge where earlier safari vehicles had begun their journeys. The sun cast its vibrant glow, a gentle reminder of the day's passage. She could see the majestic vastness she had imagined from photographs, cradled comfortably between earth and sky like whispers of eternity. Though she might not roam where the lions roam today, new possibilities unveiled themselves between each breath. In the resistance of one moment, she found newfound determination swelling within her. Accepting this truth, Violet took in one last look of the lodge at a distance, not with bitterness, but with compassion. She forgave its luxury and prejudice, recognizing how delicate humanity balances between nurturing and destroying beauty. With that peace, Violet's resolve strengthened, allowing a single thought to illuminate her mind. Here, movement was seen, heard, felt. It was the land that shaped it, the sky that framed it, and she, Violet, who would be its voice in the world. Hoping soon to see change, she turned to leave, the echo of her footsteps now leading her forward, ever onward, into the brilliance of unexplored futures. Violet stepped onto the path leading back to her temporary lodging, the weight of her actions buoying her spirits more than the scenic vistas ever could. Her quiet determination to voice the concerns she'd overheard might seem small, but it could very well be the catalyst needed to address deeper failings at the high-end safari lodge. She carried with her the hope that her actions would not only correct the place's misguided priorities but protect the wildlife she cherished so dearly. By the time she returned to her modest room, the evening sun dipped low, casting warm hues across the sky. Her phone, placed on the simple bedside table, buzzed with a notification. An official from the Wildlife Inspector Organization had replied, thanking her for the information and assuring her that immediate investigation would follow. The next morning, rumors of inspectors swirling around the Safari Lodge buzzed through the grounds even before breakfast was served. Violet, sipping her tea alone on the small patio of the communal dining area, watched as vans marked with the inspectorate's emblem rolled in, unwittingly drawing attention from other guests. Within hours, word spread, the inspectors had uncovered significant violations throughout the lodge. The unpalatable truth about improper animal hydration stations, overflowing waste tanks, and chemical contamination was becoming public knowledge, sweeping across the internet with the might of a gathering storm. Reporters arrived at the lodge, cameras ready and hungry for sound bites. Employees, guests, and managers were approached for their perspectives, the manager who insulted Violet conspicuously absent throughout the process. As Violet quietly looked on from her observation point, a wave of vindication washed over her. Her action, a simple act of conscience fueled by a lifetime of perseverance, had brought accountability to this place. She didn't seek the spotlight, but seeing the wheels set in motion filled her with profound satisfaction. The coverage of the inspector's findings soon reached beyond the lodge, making its way to local news and rapidly catching the attention of social media platforms. People from diverse backgrounds, many of whom had felt belittled or overlooked in luxurious spaces, began to voice their support for the whistleblower whose identity they didn't yet know. Their comments hailed Violet's act as brave and essential, showing the world that ordinary voices could indeed prompt extraordinary changes. Stories of similar experiences unfolded, as others recounted moments where inadequacies in service reflected fundamental neglect buried beneath opulence. A chorus of empathy and encouragement grew, creating ripples across the digital expanse. Back at the lodge, management scrambled to control the narrative, issuing a public apology and action plan to resolve the infractions swiftly. In their statement, they cited an effort to realign with the values essential to the natural wonder we celebrate. The announcement included the suspension of the very manager whose condescension had initiated this unexpected chain of events. Meanwhile, the lodge's picturesque facade quickly gained notoriety, becoming a symbol of unchecked privilege failing to align intentions with practice. Advocacy groups lauded the newfound transparency, vocalizing a commitment to observe changes closely. For Violet, what began as an attempt to honor a personal past, had evolved into sparking a broader reflection of access and respect, particularly in spaces frequenting the wealthy elite. The groundswell of support was both humbling and galvanizing. As stories spread, Violet received heartening messages of support from acquaintances and strangers alike. The diner's staff back home, now clued into the coverage thanks to a viral social media post, flooded her inbox with congratulatory notes and encouragement. Old diner patrons reached out with memories, sharing sentiments of admiration for her bravery and one purpose-driven journey no longer bound by judgment. They celebrated her integrity, though they never doubted it in the first place. The Violet they knew basked in every bit of sunlight she encountered, nurturing her spirit with sincerity and stamina. Back on solid ground, with burdens shared beyond her own shoulders, Violet embraced each message, feeling the communal tapestry of warmth radiating across great distances. Meanwhile, galvanized by the growing movement, stories from others similarly overlooked began to emerge, testimony to the audacity of individuals impatient to discover their voices. These voices signaled a shift, a collective honesty no longer content with complacency's familiar embrace. The lodge, once remote and secure from the world, became a formidable testimony to how transparency and timing work in tandem to unearth deep truths. Violet's simple decision inspired a chorus of change, a reminder that courage, unyielded by the trappings of status, turns isolation into solidarity. Though it might take months to see the tangible fruits of this moment unfold, Violet found herself no longer rooted in speculative dreams but active measures, standing taller than the shadows of doubt cast by momentary ridicule. In the midst of it all, Violet clung to the simple knowledge that challenging the status quo has a timeless grace, ferocity undimmed even when faced with storms of privilege and perception. As the media continued its dance around her unassuming involvement, she returned often to her dear friend's memory, carrying June's legacy forward. They, too, had faced world-defined standards of grandeur, but only now did Violet understand a secret: there is no cathedral more beautiful than selfless action substance. In the wake of transformative improvement, shifting energies occupied the land, a reminder that change is part of nature's true cycle, embodied in life's smallest wonders, unraveling worlds unfamiliar. If only for today, Violet's choices carried momentum to awaken asleep spirits, and reminded all watching how far one voice could carry when speaking for those who cannot dare themselves. With hearts open to truth's embrace, silence unbridled itself from its lasso, rekindling vibrato in the honest wisdom of belonging. Sitting on her patio, Violet looked across the vibrant wilderness, where the distant horizon shimmered with unspoken harmony awaiting discovery. She understood then, greater echoes follow those who venture forth, journeyed despite difficulties toward the purity of authentic being's holy celebration. Days turned into weeks, and the fervor surrounding the Safari Lodge's transformation slowly settled into the realm of routine news. However, for Violet, the experience had ignited a deeper, personal transformation, one of quiet dignity and renewed purpose that continued to ripple through her life. Returning to the diner and greeting the familiar faces that had watched her evolve was like coming home to a world she hadn't realized she missed. Her co-workers and regulars flocked around her with hugs and well wishes, their pride in her evident. They spoke of her journey like an adventure they had all taken part in, and in some way, they truly had. While she returned to her modest routine, Violet had changed. Her confidence was subtly different, a gentle resilience underpinned by knowing she had, in however small a way, shifted the world towards something better. Dressing in the same simple clothes, she now walked taller, infused with a kind of assurance that needed no external validation. One afternoon on her break, Violet received an envelope postmarked with the logo of the wildlife inspector organization she had contacted. Inside was a letter expressing their gratitude for her actions and an invitation to participate in a community panel on wildlife conservation and ethical tourism practices. The letter struck a chord deep within her, not just as recognition of her contribution but as an affirmation that her values had aligned with tangible change. The chance to speak about her experiences and join a broader movement against environmental negligence was both humbling and empowering. It represented a new chapter, not as a guest in a luxury resort, but as someone with a voice worth hearing. Meanwhile, word of the Safari Lodge's renewed commitment to sustainable practices began to travel. Locals reported enthusiastic changes, fresh water sources secured, animals thriving under better care, and staff trained to incorporate transparency into their daily tasks. Under new management, the lodge represented not just a physical change but an ideological shift, a movement toward accountability that echoed Violet's message. An earnest gesture of reconciliation came in the form of a letter from the lodge, an official apology stamped sincerely with a promise of improved practices and gratitude for her courage. Violet's response was simple, appreciation noted, and life moved forward. Her days resumed with familiar rhythms, though punctuated now with conversations around her actions, discussions rekindled by friends seeking advice on how individual choices could ripple beyond their immediate lives. They saw in Violet a lighthouse, guiding them through the moral complexity often overlooked in daily routines. This change reminded Violet of the capacity one moment holds to redefine a trajectory, to root purpose against overwhelming circumstances. She embraced the journey, embracing it warmly with the resonance of belonging. One Saturday, during a quiet afternoon at the diner, Violet strolled through town on her break, finding herself drawn to the expansive park. As she sat on a bench overlooking a small pond, she reflected on the path that had led her here. The calm mirrored serenity she felt within, and Violet let a satisfied sigh escape her lips, carried gently over rippling water reflecting a vibrant blue sky. She imagined shapes forming in the water reflections, playful reminders of joyous memories shared with June, times past yet cherished in the present as well. Her thoughts were no longer punctuated by regrets from the lodge, but by a wider understanding of interconnectedness. Impact wasn't severed from intention. Defined only by resilience nurtured in moments whose shadows could be overcome with light unyielding. Later, back at the diner, she spotted a group of young children, faces pressed earnestly against the window. Violet waved them over with a smile, proud to buy them ice creams enjoyed by the pond. Their innocent rejoicing at gentle tastes and sunshine mirrored the pure delight she, too, discovered in renewal. Some days down the line, an envelope appeared on Violet's doorstep, adorned with gentle flourishes indicating unseen magic in its folds. The interior featured a heartfelt note from a young woman halfway across the world, a novice in conservation journalism, graciously thanking Violet for her transparency and actions that made waves she yearned to emulate. The note ended with an invitation to speak with students studying environmental ethics, to share leadership from sweet sincerity her journey embodied. Violet accepted with gratitude as a new seed planted within her continued growth, this time nurtured by tears instead of sweat. On an unseasonably warm Sunday evening, as she slipped into relaxation at her modest apartment, Violet brewed a cup of chamomile tea. The steam danced precariously, delicate spirals dissipating into the gentle twilight filtering across her kitchen walls, a tapestry of dimples and imperfections casting warmth on the little corner of the world she called home. From the window she saw only splendor as colors blended to create miracles of change unbeknownst to evening's calm. Watching through sips that conjured peace, she marveled at familiar landscapes cast gently by nurturing hands of life interwoven. Her heart was no longer weighed by unreachable desires for exclusivity nor tempered in lines that whispered doubts. An ember always aglow warmed her now, stoking the constants of genuine discovery. Violet had embraced the wilderness within, a space defined by inherent strength and soft fulfillment that could never falter to trials of status and perception. With desires met honestly, she turned inward toward another adventure awaiting release among new landscapes unfolding. Her moments of reflection cradled by serenity gave birth in time not to grandeur but to abhorring complacency, nudging others along audacious roads once believed absent of paths. For Violet, each step ignited courage, illuminating every space where dreams dare cross lines of stately definition, unbeknownst as potential watches spirit unbridled innovate harmony beyond fantasies unresolved reconnect reality's embrace among equal brethren. With a quiet nod to lineage and new beginnings lit by infinities crossed and unspoken voices awoke through harmonic vibrance, Violet embraced the now considering destiny crafting life wonder brand anew.